26 April 2023 Canaveral Port Authority Commission meeting. One heck of a crowd.
It is.
So I'll take front stage. I'll lead this in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was told I'm at my best when the mic is too farther away. May I have a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve our minutes from the 5 April meeting?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Lloyd, I think you're going to lead in this first presentation.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I think you can look around and see all the wonderful faces from the Junior Ambassador Program. We have parents here in the audience, and I think we also have a couple of school board members.
We do. I neglected to acknowledge our numerous guests. My apologies. We have, of course, our steady ambassadors, Mike Gautreaux, Dennis Hepburn. Is Max King here? No, sorry. Mike Mervis. Thank you, Mike. Robbie Roberts, Bob Sox, and Jim Handley. Thank you all. And the ever-present Ambassador Emeritus, Mac McLouth. Good to see you, Mac. Have the following luminaries: Megan Wright, District 1 School Board, and Carolyn Willis from the Cocoa Beach City Council. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we go with Commissioner Lloyd's presentation.
Oh, and here's Mr. Matt Susan just walked in. Well, thank you for being here. And I know this Junior Ambassador Program means a lot to us and to the community. Robin Hadaway, our past commissioner here at Port Canaveral, has still been helping with the program, and I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce all the kids.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd, for continuing the program, and thank you to the staff for supporting. We have had amazing support from the community and all of the Port partners introducing these kids to workforce opportunities at Port Canaveral. And I would like to start by introducing two of our ambassadors, our junior ambassadors, who are back from last year. This is their second year in the program. They have come back to mentor this year's class, which is our biggest class ever. So I would like to turn it over to Chloe Rhodes and Alex Higginbotham.
Hi Commissioners, my name's Chloe.
And my name is Alex.
You may remember us, we're returning junior ambassadors from last year.
This year's been so much fun, mentoring students from nine different high schools.
We give a big thank you to the parents, the principals, the commissioners, and everyone else that was involved in making this possible.
We hope you enjoy our review of our year as much as we enjoyed exploring the Port Canaveral.
Earlier in the year, we learned about the Military and Merchant Marine Academy. On base, there's a Coast Guard station, and we were introduced to job opportunities such as engineering and mechanic work and welding. There's 7 different merchant marine academies. One of them is Kings Point, which is just like West Point or the Air Force Academy. It's sponsored by the government, and it like teaches you about the different job opportunities that you can have in the maritime field, like maritime transportation and engineering. There's a sea year that you go on, and you experience what it's like to learn and be a merchant marine for a year.
We learned about Jetty Park. The awesome thing about the park was the amount of land. 46 acres of campground, beach access, bike paths, and a fishing pier. It offers 4.5 acres of beach area that has property-owned water. It also offers a fishing pier that opens at 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. and you have to be staying overnight to be able to attend the pier at later hours. The park annually gets around 450 to 500,000 visitors annually, and to enter the park is $15 per car. The park is a revenue source for the port, and the employment at the park is through Port Authority right here at Port Canaveral. Thank you, and I'm grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you.
I'm going to be covering Port Transit. Port Transit on certain days can get up to 39,000 tourists transported in and out of the pier. And a big thank you to BTM Transportation for providing transportation throughout this great opportunity and experiences.
I just want to start by saying thank you to all of the Cove restaurants for providing food and all the local pizzerias throughout the community. The Cove restaurants and small businesses play a large role in the port. This role may be simply providing jobs for us students throughout the community or even people in college. It also is a stop for tourists coming on and off of the cruises to pick up lunch or even a small souvenir. It also hosts fishing events for the locals or people even coming in out of town for going offshore fishing throughout our port.
So the director of ambassador services took us in and he talked to us all about the logistics and the future plans happening within the port. After that, he took us on a walking tour around to different warehouses which contained lots and lots of goods. What I really learned and took away is the varying amount of jobs that the port offers, including ones that you can get right out of high school to ones that take years and years to get to.
We also had the great opportunity to meet Barry Bonsack and Samantha Salonen from Lockheed Martin, who builds satellites and spacecraft that do amazing things in space for government and commercial customers. On the slide, we listed some of their projects and job opportunities, and alone in Orlando, there are 10,000 workers for Lockheed Martin. They're currently working on Lucy, the first mission to Jupiter's Trojan asteroids. Besides, their first successful mussel launch was here from Cape Canaveral in 1963. Another fun fact was that Snoopy was on board of Artemis 1 and is a symbol for space industry since then. I'm just so glad to got placed here because I'm an exchange student and that I had this amazing opportunity to get to know more about the space field throughout this program, because I was always interested in physics and you just don't know how much is out there. So thank you.
So near the beginning of our program, we had the first-hand experience to learn about Rush Marine. Rush Marine is a construction company, and they've had some of the historically largest construction projects with the port, including the development of Cruise Terminal 3, and that was back in 2018. Since then, they've only helped the port grow. The port is growing every day, and their role is crucial in providing the construction and everything like that, along with other companies. But we learned about Rush Marine. So they have a multitude of jobs we learned about, from electricians to welders to even management. Thank you.
First, I just want to say thank you to places like Wild Ocean and Seafood Atlantic for letting us explore and learn and stuff like that. So anyway, our experiences with commercial fishing, there's the working time, which you can get up pretty much as soon as 3 a.m. or however early you need to make sure you can get the fish. And then these fishermen must have the top of the top motivation and drive to make sure because they are their own bosses, so they have to make sure that they put food on the table. So legally, to be able to catch and sell these fish, they have to have a permit. To catch fish like grouper, you have to get this permit, which costs up to $50,000. And there is a bunch of different types of shrimp in the port, which consists of rock shrimp, which we actually got to try at Wild Ocean, which definitely tasted better than the store-bought shrimp. But overall, we had a great experience exploring and learning commercial fishing. Thank you.
Now for everyone's favorite slide, Disney. So the Disney Cruise Line made sure to put a large emphasis on the fact that you don't need to have a specific skill set to be a part of their crew. From housekeepers to cooks, kids club workers to greeters, first officers to captains. The list goes on and the skill sets are endless. So aside from skill sets, we learned that their main goal is the happiness of the crew members. There are 12,000 crew members and 4,000 travelers, so the ratio, obviously, they're always focusing on those travelers. Lastly, Disney wants nothing more than the safety for the guests, so they make sure to conduct many safety tests. One that was very interesting that they talked about was that the ship goes full speed and then the wheel gets turned as sharp as possible and it tips the ship about 10 degrees, and it's all to test the stabilization of the boat. Thank you for this unforgettable experience.
Okay, so there was no better way than to finish off our last day than with this experience. During our time with the Canaveral Fire Rescue, we toured the new fireboat, which costs roughly around $5 million and can float 10,000 gallons of water, which is enough to fill up a pool within 1 minute. The fireboat has 4 engines, 2 IM boards, and 2 outboards, but the ship can perform just fine with only the use of 2 engines. We also got to meet 2 officers from the Brevard County Sheriff's Office who demonstrated the use of their canines. Before an officer is equipped with their own canine, they must go through a 10-week training with the dogs and then are assigned a dog who holds a skill of sniffing out weapons, drugs, or bombs. And even though the officers don't get to pick their own dogs, the dogs get to go home with their officer and usually get to form a strong bond with them and their families. Thank you for this opportunity.
We would like to thank Port Canaveral for this amazing opportunity to learn about our port. Specifically, we would like to thank Mrs. Bradford and Commissioner Lloyd for making this opportunity possible. It's very valuable to us and our community, and we have learned that there's more to the port than what meets the eye, as we've shown. We would love to see this program continue to grow and educate future high schoolers, and so they can have the same opportunity we did. Thank you from all of us junior ambassadors.
Yeah, I think we're going to take some pictures now. We're handing out plaques, or I have to hand out plaques.
Hold on just a second. I understand Matt Susan would like to share a few comments with us. Please come up.
Before we get in front of the awards, just wanted to say
developments as far as some of the things you're doing at the school board, and I just wanted to come and say thank you. Ms. Hadaway started this program along with the board a couple of years ago, and I wanted to say thank you to Ms. Hadaway. You had her and our former board member, Misty Belford, deserve credit for initiating this and getting this moving. So I wanted to say thank you to that. You are one of the very few municipalities that has taken the gauntlet and moved forward with taking the responsibility to giving our kids an opportunity. That is huge. This generation of students don't have those firsthand accomplishments and firsthand experiences like what you're able to do. And I wanted to say thank you for doing that. I wanted to say thank you to the parents who have given their kids the opportunity to do this. You guys waking up, coming up here, doing all the different things. But the question is how do we grow this and how do we feed, which is the ultimate piece, the workforce pipeline into your businesses around this community. So what I've done is I'm committing to sending a letter home to every one of the parents, because when we give stuff to the students, sometimes they're like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to go down to the beach and I want to be a lifeguard or something, right? But the issue is that if we send a letter home with Brevard Public Schools on top of it, parents think that there's something wrong with their kid's graduation or whatever, they'll open it. And then when they look at that letter, I would like to put down all of the opportunities that are available at the port with QR codes to each one of their HR offices so that they can reach out, and maybe we can set something up to create that pipeline. That seems to be, we had a bricks project with the Home Builders Association locally. We tried everything we could to fill 160 positions, and nothing worked. Communications, Facebooks, all that stuff. I sent the letter home. We had 110 applications out of 180 letters that went home because the parents read it and said, no, you're going to work. So the issue is that I would like to do that along with make sure that we're feeding you the right way, and if there's any way we can expand this, because this is one of the star sterling programs in our county. So I wanted to say thank you. And that was all I wanted to take a second and do.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. I got another board member here, and I don't know if you guys know this one, she's amazing right here. This is our other board member, and did they already introduce you? Stephanie, Dr. Sullivan, who's amazing also, I'm sorry. Listen, this wouldn't happen with these people back here, I just get to them talk, but they're the ones that actually do it, so I just wanted to, this is Megan Wright, the other board member, I'm embarrassing the heck out of her right now, so thank you.
Okay, we're going to present plaques now. The first one is Kaylee Atkins. Alana Bagwell. Griffin Bruger.
Yeah. It needs to be.
Callie Butler. Trey Delworth. Ellie Delworth. Emma Finney. Dalton Foster. Alex, and I always have a hard time with your last name. Gregoire. Alex Higginbotham. Vicki Hillary. Connor King. Allison Lloyd. Mateo Morris. Hannah Mueller. Chloe Rhodes. Mateo. Will Sayo. Danielle Tolan. And Jade Ussery.
Steve, in front of the dais. Yes. Okay. Now we're going to move everyone in front of the dais for the commissioners.
Commissioners, just need a presentation, all of you. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So you know that went through all the place, right?
All right, everybody, look at this phone right here. Ready? Smile, keep smiling. No, I don't want to get nervous. Okay, great.
We're going to have, Ms. Sullivan and the other board members, Megan, right? I want to make sure. You guys, Ms. Sullivan does not like to take pictures, so I forced her to be in here. Come on, Ms. Sullivan. Dr. Sullivan. Sorry, don't get it mixed up.
Okay, everyone. Hold it. Okay, everybody, ready? Smile.
That's why I have the
Thanks, everyone.
The younger person.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And I would like to point out my daughter, Allison Lloyd, just for a second. I'm very proud of her, and she was part of the program. So,
Is she the one in the second row that is blushing and turning red?
I'm already in trouble, Jerry.
Yeah.
All right, so I would like to kind of bring it back to the commissioners and talk about the program just a little bit, and continuing the program next year. I think Jerry is interested in sponsoring the program next year. Is that correct, Jerry?
Okay.
Overseeing it? And then
volunteer.
And then I think an individual day for each commissioner. So we would all do one day with the different students. So that would be kind of the goal, I think, if you guys are interested in, if you have any comments.
Oh, I wholly endorse the idea.
Yeah, I
really sure.
think the program is great, and hopefully it will. The interest in the schools and the students will continue. I want to thank Robin for getting the program started when she was on the commission, and doing many other great things when she was on the commission, and still doing great things. And it's great to hear the school board is in full support of the program. It's fantastic, and more entities need to do this type of thing for the community, for the students in the community.
What I'd like to say is, yes, sir, we'll continue to support this. I'm going to take away that I want to thank having the school board people here and superintendent here. We also support, through the Propeller Club, the Helm program at Rockledge High School. And there's well over 200 students involved, from freshman to senior, doing basically the same thing, only they're doing it full-time at the school to choice. They go to the school of choice there. And I'm just going to want to continue to make sure we mesh all of these opportunities, because the more the better here, and that's the answer here. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's outstanding. I want to commend certainly Robin Hadaway and Commissioner Lloyd for starting and perpetuating the program. I want to commend all of you participants. Hopefully it appears that you have learned that you don't necessarily have to go to college to have a fulfilling life and career. And there's a lot of need for every skill set, every experience set here at the port. And also be mindful that if you're operating heavy equipment for 2 years and decide you want to be a steel worker or a plumber or some technician, those lateral opportunities are available not only at the port but everywhere you may work. So you have to grow up fast, I guess, at this stage. But thank you all, and have a great day. Bob Musser, are you presenting next? Yes, sir. Okay, please. Nothing personal.
Sorry.
I'm going to talk about dredging and I completely empty the room.
We're out of here.
Stay. You don't want to go to school.
Are you really? You are. And I can't see it. All set? Yeah. Well, that's a tough act to follow. So. I even showered this morning too. Good morning, commissioners. I'm going to talk to you briefly this morning about our projects coming up with the Army Corps of Engineers, specifically our dredging project. We have one guest here. We're expecting a second guest. And I'm going to go forward with the presentation about his recent recognition and achievement. And then when he gets here, we do have a plaque to present him later. He's actually coming up from South Florida. So the first gentleman is Milan Mora, who will be here very shortly. He is the chief of the Water Resources Branch with Jacksonville. Basically, he's over all their waterway programs in the areas that Jacksonville has jurisdiction over, which is Georgia, Florida, and Puerto Rico. He recently, in March, was presented the highest civilian award by a Corps civilian out of more than 38,000 civilian employees at the Army Corps of Engineers. It's the Lieutenant General John W. Morris Civilian of the Year Award. And I know that his Colonel Booth, put him in for the award, and he was presented that in March up in Washington, D.C. And we have a very short video to show of that, because that's just an amazing achievement on his part. Let me see if this...
Our last award of this afternoon is the pinnacle award of our National Award Ceremony. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Lieutenant General John W. Morris Civilian of the Year Award. This award annually recognizes USACE employee has made the most significant and noteworthy contributions to the mission, reputation, and prestige of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. At this time, I would ask Mr. Mora to join Lieutenant General Spellman and Command Sergeant Major Toussaint up front. This year's Civilian Award is presented to Mr. Milan Mora, Program Manager and Chief of the Water Resources Branch for the Jacksonville District, responsible for all navigational coastal storm risk projects within Jacksonville District's area of operation. The Jacksonville Coastal Program is the largest in the nation, and Mr. Mora executes this substantial mission with a keen focus on Army values and the project management business process. He develops strong relationships with federal and local government, from the governor to the head of local and federal agencies to small local municipalities. Mr. Moore consistently demonstrates the ability to lead teams and team members to achieve excellence and successful mission accomplishment. Mr. Moore's professionalism and dedication reflect great credit on him, the Jacksonville District, the South Atlantic Division, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Chief, I would just add that if you know anything about water management in South Florida, it's a full contact sport.
Indeed.
Just wanted to play that short video. I mean, it's an honor to work with the professionals and our partners at the Army Corps of Engineers and all the divisions, navigation, civil works, regulatory operations, and we really appreciate Milan's achievement. So he should be here, I think, in a little bit, and we'll recognize him when he arrives. I wanted to turn it over next to Mr. Chris Wren. He is our project manager, so he reports directly to Milan. He is the one that gets it all done here in Port Canaveral. He's going to give you an update on our upcoming dredging project, major dredging project for the entire federal channel, and some additional information about some other funding on other projects that we're working with them. So, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Appreciate that. Good morning, gentlemen of the commission. Appreciate your time. It's been about a year since I last gave this type of brief. We've accomplished a lot of great milestones in that year, so I want to touch on a few of those. Most significantly, we did award a new contract to Norfolk Dredging Company back on March 30th for this year's dredging contract of Canaveral Harbor. Just over $18 million. We have our pre-construction meeting next week where we're going to work it out with the contractor, what the expectations are, and plan to kick that off shortly. This contract will dredge up to about 1.6 million cubic yards from the channel here, to include the No-2 portion of the port. So what is that what does 1.6 million cubic yards look like? So highlighted in green are all the areas we plan to dredge or will be dredged. And those depths you see there are the depths we'll be going to at the most. So almost full project depth in a lot of areas. Within No-2 portion, full project depth. Within certain other areas, just shy of a foot or two of the full authorized and permitted depth. So we're getting a lot of material out of the harbor this year. I do want to highlight a couple key areas that are of difference from last year's dredging contract. The first one is the middle turning basin you see on the left side of your screen. We could not do that last year because we didn't have the necessary environmental clearances. We got those clearances, so that was accomplished. That's great. We've added that to the contract to be dredged. You see those areas in green within the civil works portion of that area. That's where the main shoaling is occurring. So those are the areas that we plan to dredge. And then secondly, on the right side of the screen, you see the South Jetty sediment trap that filled up with material after Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. We realized that it poses a risk to the harbor, especially if that material was to continue to spill and get pushed in the channel. So that is the first area we intend to dredge and to clean out fully to, I think, 48 feet deep. So we're going to empty that baby out, take as much as we can, put it in the near shore that's beach compatible. But that's the first priority and first order of work this summer. And then I just wanted to highlight some of the appropriations, the monies that have been appropriated for this Canaveral Harbor and the areas here since 2021. When I took over the projects, but really in the last 2 years. You can see a total breakdown and where it's broken down by type of work, but just shy of $100 million between Canaveral Lock, Canaveral Harbor, mostly for maintenance dredging, and then the next Canaveral Sand Bypass that we're looking at to do the work next winter, winter of 24 into winter of 25. I think that finishes my slides. If there's not any questions, gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Sir.
Go ahead. Yeah, Chris, what does all the material, is it all used for the beach?
So the majority of the material does get disposed of offshore. Right. Beach compatible material can be placed near shore at Cocoa Beach. It's been a challenge identifying where that beach compatible material is any given year, how much there is. So it's kind of done on as a contractor's dredging, they take a bucket load out to look at it. Oh, that's beach compatible. Let's start putting it over there. So it's hard to plan exactly, take this material and put it in the near shore because it's.
Doesn't one of the prior slides depict the disposal areas?
Yes, actually, the first one towards the bottom there, on the bottom left of that graphic, shows the nearshore disposal area. Last year, we got just under 10,000 cubic yards, so small chunk change compared to the overall project. But we are looking into ways to optimize that and potentially get more material into that nearshore area.
I got two questions. Back coming on top of that, isn't there some question about what's nearshore sand should be? Isn't there like surfing sand versus other beach compatible sand?
There are criteria for material. It's different criteria whether it can go on the beach versus in the nearshore. But yeah, there are set criteria for the type of material, the sand that can go in those areas.
Second question, when you mentioned the no-to dredging piece. Yes. Is that separate funding?
Separate funding. It's Navy funded. Okay. Part of the same contract. We don't have any. All the work has been funded. There's no options that have been left unfunded. We're not waiting on any more money. All the work's planned to be done.
Okay, thanks.
Yes,
Chris, why the difference in dredging to different depths?
I'd have to go back in the authorizations, but a lot of it is based off of funding, how much funding we have to dredge, right? The more you dig, the more expensive it's going to be. Knowing where the port's priorities are, hey, we really need to clean up this area, get this to full depth. Other areas just are not authorized to be deeper, so.
Oh, okay.
And Commissioner, some areas are, as you go offshore, it's deeper as the vessel comes in, they're going at a faster rate of speed, so you need offshore deeper areas, and then as they slow down, as you go through the port and get all the way over to the West Basin, West Basin depth is only about minus 35 to 37 feet.
Okay.
And I think I mentioned last meeting we were going to have Dr. Kevin Bodge come back for a presentation. We're going to postpone him due to the length of today's agenda, but we will have him possibly on the May meeting or one after that, because I know there's some interest in having him talk about sand bypass, sediment budget, and everything that's going on with the beach. To the Commissioner's question about the material that goes in the nearshore area, as Chris mentioned, the criteria are different. To go on the beach, it has to be less than 10% fines. To go in nearshore, I believe it's 20% less. So you get a little bit more of the fine material there. The center point of that is really close to where Minuteman Causeway comes out. That's about the center point of where the nearshore placement area, and it's in about 15 to 25 feet of water, so it's also a safety issue with the dredgers when they're doing that. You know, they need to have pretty good weather conditions to be able to swing that scow in and release it in that zone. So safety is first, but we do a lot of work with the Army Corps on training the dredger on what to look for when they're dredging the material. And actually, the company that's going to be here, Norfolk, is the dredging company that kind of pioneered that work back when the port and the Army Corps started the sand bypass project back in '92. So they're very experienced with that, and we're hoping to get even more of that material, because once it goes offshore, it's lost to the system. So the goal is always to get as much back into the beach to keep that that cycle going with the beach renourishment.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, John.
Mr. Poole, is there a presentation or overview on our budget tweak?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the presentation short presentation, it's our mid-year budget. At the last board meeting that we had here, it's showing you financials through the end of February. We were reporting that our forecasted numbers, specifically on the revenue side, that we were going to need to adjust those numbers higher and make them more in line with the current trend. So that's what we're doing at this point. The mid-year budget has been presented to each one of the commissioners on an individual basis, and now we're doing on on a public, and at the end, we'll ask for your approval of the modifications to the operating budget, the capital budget, as well as a tariff modification as well. So we have a short presentation here, and what I wanted to go here, if you see here the first column, the original budget that was approved by the board at the end of September, effective October 1 for the FY23 year. You'll see that we budgeted $154 million in revenues, almost $109 million in operating expenses. That produces $45 million operating income, $20 million in non-operating revenues. The majority of that being the ARPA grant, American Rescue Plan Act grant funding, federal through state funding, that we're in the third and final year of receiving those funds. Non-operating expenses of $12.1 million, which would produce addition to net position for, see if it shows up there, debt reduction and port development. So that $53 million right now is targeted for our capital program. The change that I'll be discussing here is the main is the addition of the revenues, which if you look over here, the far right column, it would produce operating revenues of $180 million, operating expenses of $112, operating income of $68 million. We've adjusted, there's a net adjustment on our non-operating revenues that's now coming in a little bit below $20 million that I'll be discussing. A little adjustment to our non-operating expenses, which produces a bottom line number of $75 million that is programmed for not only this year's capital budget, but the other 4 years as well. So when the capital budget that we presented to you is a 5-year document that we're programming funding for. And specifically on the revenue side, we're increasing them by $26.4 million. Almost half of that is port fees that we bill the cruise lines, and the balance of it is related to parking. So the trends that we've been seeing that started at the end of last fiscal year continued on for the first 6 months of this year. We're projecting those out for the full 12 months. Results in an increase on the cruise revenue line item only. So of our business segments, cargo, recreation, leases, miscellaneous, the only line item that we're adjusting is cruise to be in line with current trends. Operating expenses are increasing by $3.3 million. We're adding 10 additional positions. We're going from 230 positions to 240. A lot of that is, those are programmed for our operations department, our facilities department. We need additional people on board to handle the additional ship activity that we're forecasting. That's over 900 cruise calls alone, in addition to the 500 cargo ships that we handle as well on an annual basis. We need additional line handlers, some harbor masters in the facilities department. We need some additional facility tech representatives. We have a dedicated passenger boarding bridge team. All our facilities are being used on a higher basis than they've ever been used, even going back to our pre-COVID 2019 levels. Because of that, we also have an increase in our service contracts and contractual obligations every month, and you'll see it in the last month that I'm reporting here, that is in line with the original budget. The operations budget is over $1 million ahead of budget. It's above budget. In other words, a negative budget variance. And because of the related to service contracts, all tied to the various segments, mainly related to parking, additional passengers coming in, additional parking. We have additional expenses related to that. So we are adjusting the operating budget by $3.3 million. That'll bring us in line. And on the non-operating revenues, there is a budget reduction of $4.6 million. All that is I forecasted of the total amount that we were going to receive in ARPA money. I thought we would be receiving a little bit more money, $4.6 million additional funding, not additional funding, but in this year. Turns out we did a final draw last fiscal year. And so we're still receiving the same amount of money. It's just we received more last fiscal year than we're going to be receiving this fiscal year. On the positive side, interest earnings we're forecasting those to go up by 4.1 million. A lot of that is just the investments as the Federal Reserve has increased the Fed funds rate. That flows down to just what your daily cash can be earning, or that we're available to earn on our invested monies. Non-operating expenses on the same side of where the Federal Reserve has increased their interest rates, variable interest rates have gone up as well. And so on our line of credit that we have, that's our only amount of our debt that we pay that's a variable rate. All our other debt, bank loans, bonds, fixed rate, so we don't have to adjust there. We know what that is, it's programmed in, but variable rate interest rates have gone up, so we have to budget increase that line item by additional $400,000 to cover our 2 line of credits that we currently have. That results in, when you add all those items together, our net position increasing by $22 million. The capital budget that we have, the 5-year capital budget, as we reported at the last board meeting, when you awarded North Cargo Berth 4, we have moved that from a fiscal year 24 project to a fiscal year 23 project. So we needed to adjust that in this year's capital budget, as well as the remaining 4 years, fiscal year 24, 25, 26, 27. We've got some long-term planning projects that we put in there for scheduling purposes. So we've adjusted that long-term budget. That's it on the operating budget and the capital budget. We're taking this opportunity as well to update our tariff for, it's mainly one item, but I'm listing 2 items there. The board always approves any tariff modifications for us. We wait and do it on an annual basis. We ask for the approval in September. It's effective on October 1. But because we're doing a mid-year budget as well, and hurricane season coming up effective June 1, we're making 2 rule modifications. The first one is Rule 111, and that authorizes the CEO that under declared emergencies by the president, by the governor of the state, that it authorizes the CEO or the port director that he can prioritize vessel berthing. And the second item is minor, but it's berth facilities. In our tariff, we say what active operating berths that we have open, and North Cargo Berth 3 now being operational, or soon will be in the next couple of weeks. We've listed that berth as being available. So our recommendation at this time, Mr. Chairman, is to have an approval of our fiscal year 23 mid-year operating budget, the related capital budget, and the 2 tariff changes that I just mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Do I have any discussion before a motion?
I would just like to commend again the good job on getting your arms around this situation we're in right now, and in doing something about it. And the whole construct of moving these projects forward, it takes everybody to do that, and it's going to take a lot of work and effort, more of it, but it's the right thing to do, and it's keeping us in a fine financial position, as well as getting some work done out there. So good job.
Thank you.
Very good. I've been requested to solicit any public comment, if there's any at this time. No? Okay, thank you.
Mike, parking is a substantial revenue source for the port, and you're increasing that, understandably. Do you expect parking revenue to continue on the same pace that it is? Increase? What do you all see in the parking aspect of the cruise operations at the port?
Yes, Commissioner Allender, at this time we're projecting for the next 6 months, and we think into next fiscal year as well, the same trends that we have been seeing, which is more cars coming to our port, higher than what we had in fiscal year 2019, at a pre-pandemic levels. It looks to be stabilizing and coming in. So yes, it is higher than it was in pre-COVID. And at this point, that's why we're in the capital budget that we have some planned parking garages in there, and the previously awarded projects at Cruise Terminal 1 for those surface lot improvements as well to add 900 spaces. So to answer your question, yes, we expect those trends to continue.
So the more parking we have, the more parking facilities we're going to need for the future.
Yes.
Substantially more.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the mid-year proposed budget revisions that have been presented by Mr. Poole.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Okay, next up is reports and sort of in a, I guess in response to some correspondence the commission received earlier this month, I'm going to ask for some discussion, if not comments, from our commission regarding that letter regarding our commission review process and how it may impact or be reflective of our important space industry. It's brought to my attention that the commission passed a resolution in 2019 acknowledging the importance of our relationship with the space industry. And so I thought just before I call Captain Murray up to do the CEO report, I'll solicit any comments or input from the commission, and then perhaps Commissioner Murray can chime in if he thinks he has something to add there. So Commissioner Van Valkenburg, do you have any thoughts? I know that letter was addressed to all of us.
I don't have anything concrete to say at this point, per se. I did read the letter. You know, it's a big ask for them to, the space industry to, you know, when you think about the charter, that's kind of like our Constitution. So, you know, I'm fully committed to supporting what we can do for space operations. And you know, as you mentioned, we had that resolution from 2019, and to me, I think that's you know, shows the commitment of the board, and I think all of us here probably continue to have that commitment. So I think at this point, you know, I think we want to make sure that the port has, and Captain Murray has the flexibility to identify and look at what, you know, what can be studied and brought to us as a board as far as strategically how to, you know, take advantage of what the port has, and also acknowledge some of the constraints that we have here. And so I would be in favor of you know, us directing staff to continue to evaluate you know, what might make sense, and look at the different options that they can bring back to the board going forward. And so at this point, that would be kind of my only comment, or my comments. But in terms of looking at the charter, you know, the way that the letter had proposed the changes, you know, I would not be in favor of incorporating those changes that they had into the charter. I mean, but that's not to say, again, that I'm not fully committed to helping them, because that is a very important part of the economy here.
Well put, and I appreciate your candor. Commissioner Justice? Yeah, I'll just jump right on board there. It's pretty clear, you know, we've affirmed our support for space exploration and the continued role of Port Canaveral to meet the growing needs of the aerospace industry. We acknowledge your long and shared history of the port. History and affirm the port will continue to remain committed to the growth of the space industry, which is so vital to the reason for Florida and our nation. Pretty clear where we stand, and that hasn't changed. And it's only more so, as we're all going to say here. That said, I agree that our charter it's fine. Our commitment is fine. The need, because of the constrained resources, meaning the very finite amount of deep water berthing we have at this port, we have to be flexible on who uses it, when it's used, how it's used, and we have many tenants and many stakeholders who are just as valuable to this region and just as impacting this region, and our commitment is to all of them, and to keep the flexibility that's needed to manage our bulkhead space is what's key here, and we have been doing it, and we're going to keep doing it, and there's going to be doing more. We're committing more. We're getting more bulkhead space. We're moving that, all that stuff's moving along. We're getting it done, and then we're being flexible and committed to all of our tenants and all of our partners to get their jobs done.
Well put.
Thanks.
I agree. Commissioner Lloyd.
Back in 2000 and I think it was 11, we lost like 6,000 jobs at the Space Center. And I sat on the North Brevard Economic Development Zone Board, and we incentivized both SpaceX, Blue Origin, and a lot of other different space-related companies. The community was behind us. They've always been behind space, and they've always been behind Port Canaveral. That's why we're here. So as an elected official, I feel a duty to make sure that all areas of our economy here in Port Canaveral are getting along and accommodated. And so I was actually the one that was chairman at the time and signed this resolution, but it's very clear that Port Canaveral supports space, accommodates space. It's very important to our community, the jobs, the mission of these different companies. But I think our mission as a community is making sure that we protect tourism, we protect cargo, we protect all the different areas, and we maximize the use of this port. And that's our job, that's my job. And I would challenge the companies that did sign the letter to be a bigger part of the community. I've owned a business here for a number of years. I'm second generation business owner, and I very rarely see SpaceX, Blue Origin, Relativity. I never see those people, those companies supporting and sponsoring different charities in the community. So I'd like to see them be a bigger part of our community and kind of take on the task that we've taken on as commissioners.
Commissioner Allender.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that has been said and what Micah has said regarding the space industry, the businesses being better involved in the community, which, as far as I know, they're not at all. In fundraising activities that we're involved in a lot, trying to make contact with any of them is impossible. We were foresighted enough in 2019 when Mr. Lloyd was chairman to adopt this resolution saying that we continue to support the space industry. We will continue to support it. Keeping in mind that we have limited resources here to accommodate all the needs that are in demand. So the staff and the public in general have to understand that within our limited resources, we have to make the critical decisions as to what tourism industries we're going to accommodate in everything that we have. Unfortunately, we have very limited land, so we have to make the best use of it, and I'm sure the staff will continue to work in that endeavor.
Very good, and I concur. I agree with virtually everything that's been said, and I appreciate Commissioner Van Valkenburg's analogy of the charter being akin to the state constitution, and the process of amending that should not be taken haphazardly or lightly. It's important, and also I'm a big believer that just like we represent or vote for representatives in our state and federal government to do their job. I know that this board is committed to doing our job, and we have an excellent staff, and so I'm not sure that necessarily every request or consideration needs to be embedded in a state charter per se. Let us do our jobs. With that being said, Captain Murray, would you please share with us your report?
Okay, thank you. Okay. If you have any thoughts on the issue, you're welcome to.
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. To follow up on the last question on any thoughts, yes, we are 100% committed to the space industry. We have this year on the agenda is close to 90 launches will be passing through the port, or at least we're supporting in some way or form. 2 of the major space operators are well embedded in our port. One operator is bringing in some heavy equipment and has been assigned a location to bring in a crane, et cetera. We've got road modifications being conducted to accommodate the turning of the boosters when they come back. We're doing a lot to balance in the space industry in addition to our other activities. As I've said repeatedly, we are in full support of operations. We will bring in, when a booster comes in, we'll get it off and the space industry can get it out. We all have to remember that we're a port. We're a medium, we're a conveyance between the water and the land, and the land and the water. And, the concept of coming in, doing your business and moving out is, with the space industry now, at least with one of the partners is doing just that. Same as the cruise industry, same as the cargo industry. And I have to share that, overall the economic impact of what we do here to the state of Florida is quite significant. We're a fuel supplier. I'm going to highlight it in my report in a minute, but we had a fuel situation down in Fort Lauderdale last week where we were called upon to help bring in resources to help get the gas stations up and running in South Florida. And we did that. Just shows the importance of things that get blurred over in what we do here. And as I say, the only challenge we really have with the space industry is the non-operating vessels that aren't on a mission, that there's no place for them to go, and if we just tie them up at a fuel dock, we're not moving gasoline through the port. So I mean, that's where the balance is if it's an asset that's not actually conducting an operation and it's just hanging around, there's got to be another place for it. Space Florida has a study, I mentioned it in prior meetings, on where else can we put things. We've got thousands of acres just to the east of us in the Space Force Base and Kennedy Space Center. There's got to be other options for parking idle craft than at a commercial dock at Port Canaveral. And that's been the only message that I've been trying to harp on, is that we need to make sure our commercial docks are free to conduct business. That's what a port does. We have a tremendous economic impact to the state, the local region, and the community as a whole. And I echo your thoughts that we need to continue to do that. So, unless you have any specific questions.
Yeah, on the barge canal, wouldn't there be space for them to dock their ships?
There's potential space back there, but over the years, since the fuel barges stopped fueling the power plant, the barge canal is silted in, and the draft isn't enough for some of the vessels coming in. Some of the vessels are contemplating drafts of 12 to 14 feet, which now gets more complicated in the port. We have to go to deep water berth, and that will knock out a commercial operation. So the challenge we have today, even with SpaceX, and they've been very, very good working with us, good partners, that if we've got a ship coming in and it's got a discharge, then their idle vessels need to go somewhere else, and we move them around the port. And it's not a perfect solution, but it does work. The other challenge with the barge canal is the locks aren't big enough for the biggest items that take up space in the port of the drone ships or the landing craft or barges, whatever we want to call them. They're 300 feet long. 3 of them takes up a whole berth if you have them tied up next to each other. And if they're out on mission, which is what's happened with SpaceX now, is their equipment's out on mission more often than not due to the cadence of their launches, it becomes less of an issue because we don't have to move them around if they're out doing their job. I don't know if that helps, but
Sure.
they don't fit through the locks, so they're
Lock is a
stuck
big
in
issue.
our area. And I'll put it out for the record, another area that we look at, United Launch Alliance brings their vessels in, and their vessel in, and they go over to the Space Force dock, just to the east of our fuel docks, and they conduct all of their operations there. Yet all of the commercial operators today are being thrust upon Port Canaveral to find the solution. At some point, we need to bring our space partners to the table, and why is one operator getting to use federal property, but the others are not allowed to? Doesn't make sense. So that's part of the discussion we're having with Space Florida and the study they're conducting.
Good, thank you.
Well put.
Okay. All right, so we'll get into what's going on around here. We're a busy place. Cruise update. As just heard from Mr. Poole, we've got a lot going on, and I'll highlight a couple of items. Just we've had 470 calls and 3.4 multi-day cruise guests through March. As you recall, our all-time record was 4.6 million. So we're on a high trajectory this year on our cruise guest count. The Norwegian Getaway is back. Arrived on April 17th. It's alongside today. For those of you that noticed a cruise ship on a Wednesday, it's not a frequent occurrence at Port Canaveral, but the Norwegian Getaway is here today doing a turn. The Jewel of the Seas, Royal Caribbean's last call was April 22nd. She's gone off to other places for the summer, and we'll see her back in the fall. MSC Seaside arrived last Wednesday, April 19th. The Seaside replaced the Meraviglia, which is now home ported in New York, and she will be coming here weekly on port of call provisioning calls for the balance of the year. Meraviglia will stay in New York, and she came in yesterday with it was a pretty good load on her. I want to say it was close to 5,000 guests out of New York. So MSC is doing well both here and clearly in New York as well. Morella Discovery arrives next week, May 6th. First sailing is on May 7th. As you may recall, this vessel is owned by TUI UK, and Morella Cruise Line. They will be sailing up and down the East Coast to the Caribbean and to the Gulf of Mexico on sailings home ported out of Port Canaveral for about a little over 20 weeks, starting on May 7th. Next week, one of our longtime vessels, the Carnival Magic, will depart 2 weeks on May 12th. She will be gone for the summer. That is the fourth Carnival vessel in our rotation for the winter cycle. When the winter cycle starts next fall, the Carnival Vista will replace the Carnival Magic and will start year-round sailings out of Port Canaveral. So starting in the fall, Carnival will offer 4 year-round products. Our cruise business development team made a presentation to the Cruise Line Industry Leaders of Tomorrow. It's a student organization at UCF's Rosen College of Hospitality and Management on April 5th. We've established an ad hoc relationship with this. It's a club at the school, and it's to identify future employees for the cruise industry, from working on the ships to working in the office, et cetera. It's quite an interesting group, and they came to us, approached us last year, and we went and helped them out with a presentation a few weeks ago. This is just an indication on that rolling 12-month passenger count that I show you. You see we had our spike during the Christmas holidays, but you see where we were in March of this year versus March of last year. Almost twice as many guests passed over our berths this year as last year. So the strengthening continues. The ships are full, and then some. On the cargo side, we've done 254 calls so far. Revenues at 10.7 million, tonnage at 3.5 million tons. Seaport Canaveral, as I just mentioned, supported fuel deliveries to South Florida during the recent flooding event. In the first 5 days, 1,400 truckloads with 10.9 million gallons of fuel went south. Just in round numbers, Port Everglades supplies about 40% of the fuel for Florida. Southern part, Tampa is probably another 40%. We're about 20%. And when they had the rainstorm down there and it shut down the port, it shut down all the fuel delivery options, and it took them a few days to recover. Both Tampa and Port Canaveral were running fuel south to help the Southern Florida component bring back their fuel supply. So it's just a good indication of how we, as an enterprise of the state of Florida, help each other out. And even our community and what we do is not necessarily just our local impact. We have a statewide impact when you have an emergency like this. We also had 32 pieces of heavy machinery loaded on a Gulf Tainer, a vessel at Gulf Tainer for export to Guyana. That was a unique shipment. Haven't had them before. Moving on to communications, last week we had Fox Business out here for a full day. Last Thursday they were broadcasting every hour from 8:45 in the morning until 4:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We had 5 remote broadcast interviews with Ashley Webster. We filmed from Cargo Berth 8 with a beautiful backdrop of the Mariner of the Seas behind us. The story ran across the U.S. and Fox affiliate stations. The main points or takeaways, they were highlighting that we were the busiest port in the world this past year. And then they highlighted the spike in tourism, local community, everything that's been going on here. Also in our role in supporting the commercial space industry. And then the following day, they did some other interviews and reports more specifically on the space industry and the growth here in the Space Coast. Over 140 million viewers were reached because it was filmed here. Fox put it out on their national network, and we were on TV stations in Michigan and Texas and all over the country. Just so it was great recognition for our port and everybody that works here. On the government relations side, we had the Orlando Airport CEO, Kevin Tebow, came in for a Greater Orlando Aviation Authority strategic plan that they're working on right now. And we had a one-on-one discussion on, you know, what we could do better, what they could do better, how could we work closer together. So it was a valuable conversation. Kevin, of course, is a former Secretary of Transportation and a great friend to the port. And they're doing some great things at Orlando. So we had a great, candid conversation. We also presented to the Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 1706 of Central Brevard on April 11th, giving an update on port operations and our 23 outlook. We also had an organized heavy weather workshop on April 12th, and the outreach was to all port users, vessel operators, and owners, and how to prepare for hurricane season. This was not our annual pre-hurricane season meeting. We will still have that in May, but this was after last year, and we dealt with 2 storms last year, and we had some, you know, marina issues, some issues with vessels staying in port, et cetera. We thought it would be good to have a early meeting to address with all of our stakeholders, you know, what the expectations are. Coast Guard was here. They hosted the big new members that joined us with a District 5 team from the Department of Transportation, who historically FDOT has not been involved in some of the heavy weather planning, and we thought it would be good to get them here, and they came, and it was a very, very valuable update for them as well. So more on that in a minute. We also had the Coast Guard prevention policy discussion last week, where Admiral Arguin, Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy, and Captain Espino Young were in port. We got to spend an hour with them in the morning real quick to discuss port safety, security, and updates on our port and waterways assessment, et cetera. It was a good conversation just to keep the relationship moving forward. Question?
The meeting you had with the users, our port tenants, we feel like we've made some progress and clarified again to everybody expectation management.
Yes, and I think, you know, it's got to be repeated every year. Remember that, you know, there's a lot of people that are changing seats or coming and going, and it's something that every year we have to reinvest our time in making sure everybody's understanding what the expectations are. Coast Guard came down from Jacksonville. It was a great presentation from their side and how the whole process works from a Coast Guard perspective, and it was good for everyone to understand the Coast Guard's role in closing down a port for an emergency situation, and I think it was educational. They will be doing almost the exact same presentation again coming up in May as we get started into the hurricane season, but really specifically focused on hurricanes. Okay.
Thank you.
We're also this week be in Tampa participating in a FDOT-sponsored fuel resiliency workshop. One of the items that comes up every year during hurricane season is we'll get a call from the secretary or his designate or the governor's office or his designate and say, okay, what's the fuel situation? And because we are collectively as Florida ports, particularly the fuel ports, Canaveral, Everglades, and Tampa, we have a combination of operators. Some are within port control, some are outside of port control, and it's sometimes difficult to get a real assessment of what fuel we have on hand because of the private operators that many of them are public companies. They can't readily share information, et cetera. So this session is bringing those folks, the port people, all together and say, how can we do this better in the upcoming hurricane season? If we have a statewide evacuation and people are leaving South Florida heading out of state, we have to know where the fuel is, and is it going to be available for them to evacuate, and is it going to be available for them to come back? So this is a workshop to see if we can refine that process in advance of the hurricane season coming forward. We're also working with Florida Ports Council. We have a DC fly-in with the Florida Ports Council on May 16th. Florida Ports Caucus federal agencies will be briefing them in meetings with Florida congressional representatives. It also coincides with CAGIT, which is the Coalition of American Gateways and Trade Corridors annual board meeting in Washington, which will also, that group, which we are members, will be participating in other visits as well with our congressional leadership. There's also been a Florida bill introduced recently naming the State Road 3 bridge over the Canaveral Barge Canal the Krista McAuliffe Bridge. I don't know what the status of that bill is, but it's been introduced and be going through the machinery of Tallahassee. Last, I just wanted to recognize the Propeller Club Shrimp Feast on April 14th that raised approximately $12,000 for the scholarship fund, and it was great to have that participation. And congratulations to Commissioner Justice, who got the Maritime Man of the Year award. So.
What I'd like to do is thank the staff, the staff members who supported the Propeller Club at that event. 200 people, great show, great night,
Yep.
and but not without a lot of work. So I appreciate that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. On the environmental update, Mr. Musser participated in the annual Army Corps of Engineer boat inspection tour from Melbourne to Palm Coast aboard the Army Corps' Florida 2 survey boat. And that included representatives from the Corps of Engineers, Florida Inland Navigation District, Corps of Engineers Division, FDEP, Brevard County Engineering Consultants. Sounds like a great boat ride, but thanks for doing that for us, Bob. I know it's hard work. Lastly, Disney Cruise Line had the Earth Month cleanup on Saturday, April 15th at Jetty Park, and staff and crew from the Disney Fantasy, along with their DCL Shoreside team, joined port staff in the cleanup effort. Public safety, again, I mentioned the April 12th meeting. The presentations were made by Coast Guard Sector Jacksonville. I'm not going to go on it anymore unless there are any questions, but it was part of our public safety brief, even though the political side, we made sure we brought FDOT to the table. We also completed the facility security plan updates to bring North Cargo Berth 3 back online. Changes have been approved by the Coast Guard, and we hope to have that berth operational within the month. So we're working very hard to get those final details completed so we can put a ship alongside. We also have some dedicated parking spaces provided now for Customs and Border Protection, which are outside the garages at 5 and 6, which frees up passenger spaces in those 2 garages, which, as we've reported already, are very full. It also meets CBP's request for parking outside of the garages, so that's a win-win for everyone. And that's my report. That vessel there is the MSC Seaside on her maiden voyage out of Port Canaveral last Wednesday. You can see the configuration on the aft end of the ship is very, very unique. It's quite a ship when you see it firsthand. Very different design. This class of ship was designed for warm weather. In the winter season, she goes to Barbados and home ports there and covers the Eastern Islands. And summer season, she'll be here at Port Canaveral. So. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Good report.
Thank you. Cool. I think you're up next again, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, and maybe this is just so we can capture it in the minutes, Melanie, that on the agenda, when I asked for an approval of the mid-year budget, which is the operating budget, the capital budget, I also included the modifications to the tariff in there as well. That's listed on the agenda. It was on my PowerPoint. It was what I asked for an approval, but just to make it clear in the minutes, the board did approve all three of those. When I heard the recommendation, I don't know if I heard the operating budget and capital budget. I didn't hear the tariff modification.
You're correct, so that's a good clarification.
If that's okay with the board, just to have the minutes reflect that they approved the tariff
Included in
modifications.
my motion, I think I mumbled that in.
Okay.
That's why you didn't really hear.
That's it. Well, I'm getting old. It's my hearing. So if we could have the minutes reflect that. Okay, thank you. Now, if we go to this, all right, so we have 6 months into our year, so 2 quarterly periods, right? 2 3-month periods that we're going to be reporting on. And again, these financials have the original budget numbers in there, which has the lower revenue estimates in there for cruise, as well as on the expense side as well on the operating budget, specifically the operations department. How did we do for the month of March? March, by itself, revenues were $17 million. That was $4.5 million above budget. Again, the original budget, monthly budget for the month of March. Why? We had 603,000 cruise passengers. I'll be showing you on a month-by-month basis how March was a very strong month. 524,000 cargo tons as well that contributed to that $4.5 million in revenues being above budget solely for the month. This shows you here the $17.2 million, the various segments. Everything is at or above budget with the exception of Recreation Jetty Park just being slightly below for the month itself. Now, year to date, through the whole first 6 months of the year, revenues were almost $99 million. It's $21 million above budget. We'll be discussing that. Expenses at $54 million or $422,000 below budget. Why are revenues $21 million above budget? Cruise is $19 million of it. Cargo is $2 million. Why is cruise $19 million above? It's the passengers, right? That 404,000 additional passengers then that are ahead of what we originally forecasted. On the cargo side, why are we $2 million above? We're 473,000 tons of cargo above our original forecast. And I'll be going over the cargo segments that make that up. That here is a recap. So at cruise is $19 million above budget. There's your 3.4 million calls. And why is that? When you look at it on a quarter by quarter basis, you see a real consistency here. So out of that 3.4 million passengers, first 3 months of the year was 1.7 million passengers. Next 3 months, January through March, the second quarter, almost the same 1.7 million. So very predictable, very stable cruise activity that's coming through our port. This is it on a monthly by monthly basis. We analyze things every 3 months. Every 3 months they're very similar, and with one of the 3 months, 1 month in that 3 month quarterly period are always a little bit higher. If you look here, October 500,000, November approximately 500,000, 700,000 increases in December. So that was our highest revenue month for the year for the first 6 months. Then January, February, you see very strong, and then March spikes up. April, very strong month as well. So we don't show you April, but the third quarter, April, May, June, you'll see April will be higher than May and June, and the April numbers right now are actually trending higher than what March is right now. So all those are baked into our revised forecast. And that shows you on a total, it's 3.4 million. We budgeted almost 3 million, and now we're ahead of budget. On the cargo side, yes, that 10.7 million is made up of cargo fees of 8.5 million. Those tenants that push the cargo through, they pay rent of 2.2 million. That's 1.9 million above budget. Why is it above budget? It's fuel, it's lumber, it's also granite. A lot more granite that's coming through our port that we have previously reported on, and it's ahead of what we originally budgeted at the beginning of the year. And what are we on an annual basis? Those 3.5 million tons, 16% above prior year. And the main reasons of being above prior year is it's fuel and it's lumber. Those segments are still very strong. The remaining segments of our business, last 3 items, leases, recreation, miscellaneous, you add them together, it's 6.2 million. That's over ahead of budget by $586,000. Leases, miscellaneous are all coming in above budget. Jetty Park, which is our recreation, slightly below budget. So nothing to be concerned about there. This is on an annual basis. You'll see again that budget variance that will be a much smaller amount next month when we adjust the monthly numbers and the annual numbers up to on cruise, when it becomes a total of $150 million of our $180 million revised budget. But that's how it is under the current budget that the board approved on October 1. On expenses, here's the 13 departments. When you add them all up, we're still $421,000 over. The one department that's ahead of budget due to service contracts, contractual obligations, those expenses related to pushing more passengers, more cars through our port. That's that operations department. That is above budget, but we have now implemented a budget modification that will bring that in line. At the end of the day, how did we do? $98 million, operating expenses of $54 million, counting our non-operating revenues and expenses results in $51 million that's available for our capital budget, and that is programmed funding that we already have. Commissioner Justice, I will take any questions or if I can have a motion to accept, as it says in the agenda, our financial memo for March of 23, as well as the statistical report, the aging report, the list of bills, and an approval of the list of disposals, legal bills, and the commissioner minor expenses for the month of March. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Mr. Crow.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to step you through a few items I have on the consent agenda and a capital projects update. I'm going to start with item 1A. This is for the newly purchased mobile harbor crane. So we have been working with Liebherr on an advanced coating system to upgrade the Tier 5 coating system that we ordered with an offshore salt spray rated extreme offshore coating system. So that adds about $53,500 to the purchase price of that crane. You see the new total at $7.47 million, and it adds about 8 to 10 weeks to the manufacturing process. So rather than taking final commissioning of this crane toward the end of calendar year 2023, it's going to push into Q1 of 2024. That is item 1A. Item 1B is in reference to the parking garage expansion project that Mike Poole mentioned in his presentation. And we have selected Bermelo Ahmil. We have recommended them for your award. And because there are still some unknowns in the total scope of that project, whether it was the originally anticipated single garage between Terminal 8 and Terminal 6, or potentially and more likely 2 separate garages flanking Terminal 10 and the Terminal 6 garages to support all the cruising increases on the north side. We need to spend a little bit of time scoping that and come back to you at a later commission meeting, hopefully May 24th, potentially in June with that final design criteria package, that DCP proposal. And just a note, RS&H is teamed with BA, and John Rice is here from RS&H in the audience. Item 1C is related to North Cargo Berth 4. If you recall, we kicked that off with Orion Marine Construction last month. This is limited construction admin services, so we had 3 teams solicit. We shortlisted or downlisted to 2. They came in for presentations, and Jacobs is the recommended consultant firm for award. And we are asking permission to negotiate and then execute a contract for services up to $490,000. That's commensurate with what we spent on North Cargo Berth 3. Item 1D is the subaqueous crossing replacement we've been discussing with FPL. We did get an updated binding cost estimate from Florida Power and Light for the $1.5 million. They have some final permitting that they need to do before they actually award that work. They will invoice us only the amount spent installing those 3 conduits, 2 for FPL, 1 as a spare for us to use for a separate IT-related project that would install an additional redundant fiber optic connection to the north side. And those conduits will be 150 feet deep, you see from the cross section on the right, to go under the channel and clear the future improvements of North Cargo Berth 4. So item 1E is a no-cost item related to fleet purchase. If you recall, in October, we approved a budget for new and refurbishments for vehicles. The new purchase was related to the Florida Sheriff's Association contract. There is very limited availability for vehicle purchases in that contract, so we're wanting to expand that to other government competitively bid agreements that we can piggyback on to purchase those vehicles. And also I wanted to give a shout out to Brian Carroll, our fleet manager. For the 4th year in a row, he was named, or our fleet department's been named in the top 100 best fleets for government municipalities. So I think we're number 64, 65. So Brian's doing a great job. Item 1F pertains to the cylinder replacement at CT1 gangways. We kicked off the purchase of 7 new cylinders last June. Those cylinders have been manufactured and delivered. In the process of install, we will remove the existing cylinders, have the existing ones rebuilt, and then reinstalled. And we have about 5 phases of removal, rebuild, and reinstall to finally replace all 24 cylinders throughout the 2 passenger boarding bridges. So item 1F is asking for expanding that phase 1 through all the future phases for $374,000.
We're happy that's the only one of those types of boarding bridges in the port, right?
The hydraulically operated ones, that is correct. The ones that we have recently purchased are operated by electric motors and screw-driven lifting frames. Just a brief update on North Cargo Berth 3. Obviously, we are all but wrapped up with that project. What you see here has since been installed. This is in the area of North Cargo Berth 4, installing stormwater pipe. You can see North 3 in the background. It's completed. It's paved. We're installing security fencing. The dredging is completed. And since this photo was taken, the fenders have all been installed. And we're doing CCTV camera install along with the lighting. You can see the high mast pole being worked on in the background. We do have some additional paving that we added late in the project that Rush will be working on probably through the end of May. So this is likely one of the final updates you'll see of the project. I'm sure we'll have a completed final photo at the end, but glad to see that project wrapping up. Any questions around the port here with various projects? If you noted, the scaffolding at Exploration Tower is coming down. It should be wrapped up in a couple of weeks. There's doors that still need to be replaced on the north side of the tower, and the internal drywall repair will be the final step.
Well, and at that point, they'll be ready to be occupied?
Correct.
Okay.
And then this is just a photo that Veronica grabbed of newly completed bus stop at Dave Nisbet Drive and George King Boulevard. So we're glad to see that project completed as well.
I'm sorry that the executive director for the TPO could not be here. She left to see these bus stops because they are fantastic.
Yep. And we will be, I got with Veronica, we're going to be sending these photos to the Space Coast TPO for inclusion in an upcoming publication, hopefully.
Good, thank you.
So, thank you. If there's any questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
There being no public comment on the consent agenda that I'm aware of, I'm going to ask the commission if there are any items they wish to be pulled. Commissioner Van Valkenburg?
Nothing today, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Justice?
2A.
Commissioner Lloyd?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Allender?
And I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So may I have a motion to, well, let's discuss first. So, yeah?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I'll move approval of consent item 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1F, I'm sorry, 1E, 1F, 3A, and 3B.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Justice.
Yeah, I pulled this really, say for discussion, but I've watched, like I guess we all have, but I've been watching the charter review meetings with great interest, and I'm just going to make the comment that between our staff attorneys and Mr. Beislein, we're paying for plenty of lawyerly support for this charter review committee, and I really want the opportunity to not vote on it, to vote negatively on it. So anybody who wants to approve this, please make a motion for consent for approval, and we'll take a vote.
What was it? Wasn't it discussed at the charter meetings that they wanted outside counsel besides?
It took 3 meetings to get to the point of finally wanting it, and I'm not going to speak. I really, it's not my place to speak for them. Unless Mr. Beislein would like to add anything. Okay.
Okay. Well, may I have a motion with regard to item 2A to accept or disapprove?
Is there any more background that we get to hear about why they want counsel? They just need an expert on it? Mr. Zeiler?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name's Michael Zeiler, Assistant General Counsel. I've been assisting with the Port Charter Review Committee. They are well underway. This item, as Commissioner Justice noted, has been some time in the works. Early on, I introduced to the committee members that they have the ability under our Port Charter to employ independent legal counsel. You do, of course, have assistance of staff, myself and Craig Langley, and Mr. Beislein has been attending all meetings. However, and sorry if I sound a bit, the allergies have been very unforgiving to me in the past couple months. So, getting back on track. Our Port Charter allows the committee to employ independent legal counsel. That may be important to them to ask and seek external counsel because there may be, for instance, some conflict internally. Staff may not agree with a certain direction. So I provided these options to the committee. We arrived at introducing a solicitation for external counsel. That resulted in 5 responsive proposals. The solicitation route, I would note, was not a requirement on our part. We just wanted to operate in full transparency during this process and provide the committee with the best options out there. And I think they got those. From the 5 responsive proposals, they had a difficult decision to make. We were able to shortlist down to 2 firms, and those 2 firms, Gray Robinson and Weiss Serota, presented. They were available for interviews and questions and answers at the committee's last meeting. From that, having selected Mr. Gugelman, who actually most recently represented the Brevard County Charter Review Commission's work that concluded last year. So they've arrived at a stellar figure as far as charter attorneys and local government experts go. I think his rate is quite reasonable in this instance. And so having provided that background or worked through it, open to any other questions about ultimately making this decision to go forward or not.
Any ballpark on what the financial commitment might be?
I've asked for this mid-year budget review for authority for up to $20,000. The rate here includes $550 flat fee per meeting. These meetings have not typically gone over an hour, but as there is still some more work to do and a little time to do that, as our goal is to conclude by June, and we're approaching that date, think there are some other items in the pipeline that it will help to have external counsel's eyes on.
So my 2 cents, if I may, I think it would be wise. Harold represents us as a board, and then staff, we have 2 attorneys on staff. So I do think there could be a conceived conflict of interest from the public or even from the committee members that we've appointed. So I'm in favor of it. I think now that I've heard kind of the reasoning behind it. So.
I would just like also to add that at least up until now, I don't know how many meetings we're into it. I mean, there hasn't been any item that has remotely got to any level of need for an outside impartial attorney. Now, maybe there's something in the works, but I'll be surprised. I'll leave it there.
And you know, if there's some kind of conflict thought between Harold and our staff, wouldn't there be some conflict if Gray Robinson was selected? I mean, there are their counsel on other things for us. I mean,
That was brought to that was put forward in questioning during their presentation at the committee meeting on April 14. They did address that. They insisted that there would not be a potential conflict, and of course, our mission here is to have a very non-controversial charter review process. But there may be unknowns.
But let me say nothing against Paul Gugelman. I know him. He is the counsel for the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. And at least to my knowledge, a very, very good attorney. Whether outside counsel is needed or not, I mean, I really question, but I don't know.
I think for the sake of transparency, it's a good idea. And there's a lot of attorneys sitting back here behind this dais, so
it is an ocracy. A lawyer asking for the board's approval to hire a lawyer. I don't want to jeopardize my own position.
Well, hopefully there won't be considerable need for it, but I think conceptually, I think it's a good idea. And to use Commissioner Lloyd's term, in the sake of transparency, I used to work at the same law firm as Paul over 30 years ago. I know him to be eminently qualified to do what he's doing. He's been city attorney for Melbourne, and, as well as the other agencies that we've discussed. So I think it's a very good choice. And as I said, hopefully he'll mostly just be sitting on his hands.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve consent item 2A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Carries. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Public comment. Mr. Richard Ross.
Good morning, Commissioners and Board Director. Real quick, Richard Ross, President of the ILA Union. I've just come here today. I felt compelled to state, I thought I would have heard it in the report from the CEO, the actual, I want to say kudos, because the new vessel schedule report is now online. And I think that's something that is very, very resourceful and unique. I also would like to say the Waypoint newsletter communications, that's very, very informative as well. And I want to just give you all kudos to that, because I actually was able to borrow some of the actual layouts in our communications to our organization. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the being the cruise in the #1 cruise port in the world. We celebrate that, the Longshoremen, and we look forward to continuing, hopefully in the ensuing years, to grow upon that. It was mentioned in Sea Trade, and I would definitely like to continue to grow on that path. So that was it. I know that sometimes we don't hear enough compliments, so I just wanted to bring that today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. next we have Rich Gramison with the Propeller Club update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Grimison with the Canaveral Pilots, and I'm here this morning to provide a Propeller Club update. My first two items have already been mentioned. Wanted to report to you that Commissioner Wayne Justice was named by the Propeller Club as our Maritime Person of the Year for 2023. And to also thank you all for your support for Shrimp Feast. As has already been reported, we raised over $12,000 for scholarships. Speaking of scholarships, our scholarship committee met earlier this month where we are awarding 4 scholarships this year, one of which is for a total of $10,000, which is $2,500 a year recurring scholarship. And that'll be the third one that we have awarded in the last 3 to 4 years. Our Helm program, thanks again for all the support for the Helm program. They were here last meeting and did a nice presentation. Since that time, we've had quite a few field trips out to the port with the Helm students for their spring field trips, including tours aboard Royal Caribbean's Mariner of the Seas, Independence of the Seas, a visit to the Coast Guard station, a visit to the shipboard firefighting simulator with Canaveral Fire Rescue, a terminal tour of CT3 with Rocky Johnson from Ivy's Construction, and a bus tour around the port, which I was the tour guide. And I have to say that it's been a few years since the last time I did a bus tour around the port. And up there on the north side, trying to weave in between all the heavy equipment and the trucks, it's just incredible how busy this port is. And it was great for the kids to see all of that, all the jobs. Need a lot of truck drivers. Our upcoming events, May is going to be a busy month for the Propeller Club. We'll have our May luncheon on May 3rd. That is our annual education luncheon. We will award our scholarships. We'll have a recap, year in review of the Helm program. And our school board chairman, who was here earlier, Matt Susan, will be our guest speaker at that luncheon. On May 24th, we will have a networking happy hour at the Carib Brewery from 5 to 7 p.m. And then on May 27th, we will hold our annual National Maritime Day event. That'll be on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. Maritime Day is actually May 22nd, but we do our event here at Port Canaveral usually the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. One of the reasons for that is to deconflict with Thunder on the Beach. So thank you again for all the support for the Propeller Club, and look forward to seeing you all at our upcoming events.
Thank you. Thanks. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Van Valkenburg, anything to share with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No events per se. I just, you probably all read the article about the Brightline train station. So I want to echo Commissioner Lloyd's comments from last month or earlier this month when he mentioned that Cocoa would be an optimal site for a station. And I agree with him on that point. Thank you.
Commissioner Justice. Last 3 weeks, a couple of port tours conducted. Had a chance to get back aboard the Cutter Vigilant to help give out the Sailor Quarter recognition to those hard-working sailors on that very old ship. There was a CivMil meeting, an event. It was held at a commercial space place down by the Melbourne Airport. And the interesting thing about it is that all this stuff we talked about, I heard loud and clear, at a social event from some commercial space people. So I'm glad that we had that discussion today and made our position clear. And then lastly, leaving this afternoon to go up to Savannah, the Propeller Club's Southeast Regional Conference is tomorrow up in Savannah, Georgia. Thanks, that's all I got. Very good. Commissioner Lloyd.
I have no report.
Commissioner Allender.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm happy to have my wife with me today. Today is our 26th wedding anniversary. And, 26 years. 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 26 ye excited to start off today at the Canaveral Port Authority. That's all I have.
Congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
Consistent with Commissioner Justice's comments, I feel like it's important every opportunity I have to engage with the public, particularly a group, to answer questions and educate. I had the opportunity but within the last 10 days to speak to a group of about 30 to 40 realtors. The moderator asked me to spend a few minutes talking about the port, which I was happy to do, and the audience was actually eager to ask questions and learn something about the port. I still hear frequently, wow, it's great, you're the #1 cruise port in the country. I said, no, keep going. And then I also had a business dinner, which one of our charter review volunteers attended. And so that prompted the opportunity again to kind of get off task a little bit and talk about the port. And that particular charter review member was very enthused about their service and wants to perhaps consider more involvement at the port. And so again, had a captive audience. They didn't seem to suffer too much over the rubber chicken and Commissioner Markey. So I would encourage all of you to continue to do so. That being said, our next meeting is 24 May, 9 o'clock, same place. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, sir. So, well, what's done?